Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter. As you can see in the subheading, A Glorified Zion. So this is Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. And this goes really into the, like the subheading says, a glorified Zion. This goes into the mercy that the Lord is going to show his people in the last days, right? In delivering us, glorifying us, and translating us, okay, from captivity to the glorious kingdom of heaven, okay, and how the nations, okay, the heathens are going to be subject and tributary onto us. So this is Isaiah 60:1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord Yahweh is risen upon thee. Okay, and that's pretty much the Lord. We know that ultimately, the light is Yahushai. Okay, but the Lord is shining that light upon us. Okay, as a means of getting us out of this state of darkness. Okay, to finally the Lord taking us out of this low condition and having mercy upon us. Okay, and the glory of the Lord that is going to be risen upon us is when he delivers us, right? Because he is going to send the Yahushai back and the angels, right, in power and great glory. Okay, and by them coming and delivering the Lord's elect, okay, he is going to translate those that are chosen and change them and glorify them as well. Okay, so that's the glory of the Lord rising upon us and shining upon us, that we may also be glorified. Verse 2, for behold, the darkness shall cover the earth. And when we go into this word darkness here, it describes the state of the earth as we are living in it today, right? So Isaiah is pretty much saying that, in that time when these things are going to happen, the earth would be in a state of darkness, right? Chashak, which here says obscurity, darkness. But looking in the Strong's definition, we see here literally darkness, but figuratively misery, destruction, death, ignorance, sorrow, wickedness. And these are spot on characteristics that describe the state of the earth right now. Okay, because we're at the very last point, the pinnacle of transition between empires, between Esau's rulership and the kingdom of heaven. So as it says here, for behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness to people. So that gross darkness is like a thicker, a version of this darkness, the people. And that's what's causing the earth to be covered in that darkness, right? Because the people are in a mindset of ignorance, of violence, of death. And that's the majority of people today. But the Lord Yahweh shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. See? And so from that state of darkness, the Lord would shed that light upon Israel, starting with his elect. So first mentally, by opening up our minds through the Holy Spirit to understand this truth and this word, and to believe in Yahushai, who is ultimately the light. And through that shining, as it says, his glory shall be seen upon us, right? So through the this word, eventually it would lead to that actual physical salvation and glory, which would basically make us shine in this world of darkness. And through that, the darkness in itself would be dissipated, right? Because then it's like the visual of a completely dark world, and then you have this little ray of light, and eventually that light just starts to expand and expand and expand, and then eventually it completely drives away that darkness. And I believe in 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, it mentions how truth shall overcome and flourish. Verse 3, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to thy brightness, or to the brightness of thy rising. Right, so thy light, meaning the light of Israel. So once the Lord shines that light upon us, delivers us, translates us, you're going to have these nations that are going to be subject unto us, and they're going to come to us, as the scriptures say, let us go right to the mountain of Jacob to learn of his ways. So they're going to be subject and come to that light, because the whole earth is going to flourish with the knowledge of the Lord, and everybody is going to be subject, regardless of your nationality or what you used to believe. Everybody's going to be subject to the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which is going to be light. Okay, really the true enlightenment. As it says, and kings to the brightness of thy rising, right? Which is, it's, in other words, it's saying the same thing, right? Kings are of the Gentiles or the nations, and thy rising is synonymous with thy light. Lift up thine eyes round about and see. So look around you. All they gather themselves together, they come to thee. Thy sons shall come from far, and thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. See, because there's going to be a gathering, right? Keep in mind, this is all culminating the event, right? The main event that starts with the really blows up with the return of the Lord. Okay, because that's that physical transition period. But the Lord is going to have his elect gathered, right, from all four corners, wherever they may be, and brought, okay, to Israel, as it says in Baruch, I believe it's the 4th chapter. So there's going to be a gathering, as it says, thy sons shall come from far, so the various regions where we've been scattered, and thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. Now, to be nursed is, pretty much to be taken care of, right? But how can they be nursed at thy side, if they're not near you? So that's just to emphasize the gathering and being brought back together from wherever we've been scattered. Verse 5, then shalt thou see, or then thou shalt see and flow together, right? So then you're going to see with your own very eyes the fulfillment of these prophecies, the faithfulness of the word of the Lord. And by flowing together, right, it's like saying we're going to be joined together, right? And thine heart, meaning your mind, shall fear. When you go into the word fear here, it goes into being in awe, right? One of the definitions there is being in awe, because these things we're reading about here are not a light thing, right? This is an actual major transition, and not just in the world, but in this age. So it's going to be a very big deal, and witnessing that is going to put you in a state of just shock, right? Not in a negative sense, if this is beneficial to you, but it's just going to be a lot to take in and be enlarged, right? And the use of the word enlarged here is really to signify overjoyed, okay, for lack of a better word, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. And the abundance of the sea is referring to the resources of the sea, right? Goods that can be carried by ship. They're all going to be brought onto us. The forces of the Gentiles, the forces here is in reference to their wealth. Of the Gentiles, which are these nations, shall come unto thee. So their resources, their wealth, all of these things are going to be brought onto us, because they're going to be tributaries onto us. Verse 6, the multitude of camels shall cover thee. And camels, are like the ancient world's version of trains, right? Or transportation. And they were used like donkeys and stuff, but they could travel far longer distances to carry goods and resources, right? So the multitude of camels covering thee also signifies being, over provisioned with resources from all different areas. The dromedaries, which is just another a term for a young camel, it's still referring to a camel, of Midian and Ephah. All they from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall shew forth the praises of the Lord Yahweh. See, so you're going to have these nations with whatever resources they specialize in, because you have certain resources that are more abundant in particular areas. And so these nations, having those resources that they once again specialize in, they're going to bring the best of those to us, right? Praising the Lord, because once again, the way of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is going to flourish throughout the earth. And even though they're going to be captive and serving under us, they will prefer that above this reign of Esau Edom, or really any other heathen reign. Because one, they're going to come to the realization of who the true power is, and they're going to have to accept the fact that it's not that you have your own God and this nation has their own God and yada yada. No, there's only one God, but he's just not, you're not his people. And they're going to understand and accept that. But they're still going to be in a better state, even though they're subject onto us, because we're going to instill proper order. We're going to run the earth as it was created to be run. And so the earth in itself will still be a paradise. Okay. And to put it, plainly in an example form, you would rather be a slave in a beautiful paradise than to be a slave in hell, right? Put it like that. Because slaves, think about it, right? As a slave, you still are going to eat so that you can stay alive to serve your labor. But would I rather eat defiled food in hell as a slave, or would I rather eat the version of defiled food in a paradise is still going to be better than the best food you can get in hell, right? So, hey, tributary, slave, captive, whatever their role, they're still going to be better off in that, acknowledging and praising the Lord than in the roles that they're in right now. Verse 7, so it's signifying really the nations bringing their resources onto us. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together unto thee, which I believe Kedar was one of the sons of Ishmael. But once again, their resources, which here would be their flocks, right? Their sheep and so on and so forth. They're going to bring the best of those onto us. So when you go back during the time of King Solomon's reign, there's mention of his provisions, right? How he had, hundreds of this, hundreds of that, hundreds of this, just for like, a day's worth or a week's worth. And it was a lot. Well, they were provided to him, right? They were given to him. Those that were shepherds, those that had sheep and they had large flocks, they would provide a certain amount for the king's provision daily. Well, in this case, like today, you have imports, right? Countries import things to other countries that don't have them there. And those countries depend on those, right? They depend on that supply to feed their population and use the resources as they see fit. So these are similar, right? You're going to have these goods imported or brought onto us. As it says here, they shall come up. Oh, Salakia, and the rams of Nabaioth shall minister unto thee. And ministering here, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a ram that's going to stand up on two hooves, with a garment on and start teaching you. Ministering meaning they're going to serve us. So we're going to be able to use them, right, for whatever use that is, for offerings, and so on. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory. Right, so we're going to be able to use them for offerings. We're never going to be short of resources. And I will glorify the house of my glory. And who is the house of the Lord's glory? Israel. Who are these that fly as a cloud and as the doves to their windows? Which in here, Isaiah is receiving a vision, right? And he's saying this because he's seeing it. And his vision that he is seeing is the Israel in a glorified state, right? From the state they were in, both at the time when he was on the scene, and also the state that we were in the visions that he saw of us in the last days, right? In a destroyed state. He's seeing now in this vision us being in a far better condition than any of the times that, or the conditions we've been in. And he's seeing this, he's seeing us being glorified. He's seeing these nations being in awe and being willing to want to submit to us and bringing their resources to us. He's probably seeing different scenes of like entourages of just resources being brought, all in, the gates being opened. Like he's seeing all these things. And then he's also seeing, which he mentions, the chariots, right? That's what he's seeing. And he's saying, like, who are these that fly as a cloud? Because we know the chariots, sometimes they either cloak themselves in the clouds or they may look like a cloud. But he's just seeing them flying all around, because I mean, that's going to be a part of the kingdom of heaven. These are the celestial vehicles. All right. So when we look here in the NLT, it says here, and what do I see flying like clouds to Israel, like doves to their nests? See, and those are going to be the chariots. And that's going to be a beautiful sight. You know, different colors shining in the daytime and the nighttime. Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them. Right. So you're going to have some Israelites also being brought, okay, from different areas where they may be by these nations, okay, as a form of or a token of you know, I don't even know what word to use for here, but you know, just as a sign of them submitting to us, right, or acknowledging us as the holy and glorious people, just as they would bring their silver and bring their gold and bring their resources. It says here, their silver and their gold with them, once again, those resources, onto the name of the Lord Yahweh thy God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he hath glorified thee. So this is going to be the state of the world, where it's like a complete 180, because now these nations don't respect Israel, right? They look at Israel as the bottom of the bottom, the worst of the worst. Because when you look at the culture and the life and the way that Jake lives and carry themselves today, you can see why. But that's why the scriptures mention us being a reproach, right? And a byword and a proverb in the eyes of these nations. But here Isaiah is seeing and describing how the Lord flips that 180, as to where the nations that didn't want anything to do with us, disassociated themselves with us, and looked at us reproachfully, will be doing the opposite. Okay, and being willing to come and serve and submit unto us. And not like they're going to have a choice, but, you know, verse 10, it says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, which are referring here to the other nations. They're going to build up our walls. They're actually going to be laboring in building up our kingdom. And their kings shall minister unto thee. So their rulers are going to serve us. For in my wrath I smote thee, right? So the Lord being angry by us worshiping other idols and going astray from the path he set for us, he smote us. And by smiting us, we became this low, destroyed people, being subject unto all these other nations, right? Being, once again, a reproach and a byword, suffering these curses. That was by us being smitten of the Lord. But in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So at the point of our captivity being over, the Lord remembering his mercy, right, and his promise onto us and delivering us, that's the mercy he has showed onto us, where we will be delivered, we will be changed, we will be glorified and raised to a status above all these other nations again. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces, once again, the riches, the resources, the wealth of the Gentiles. And we just read above a couple of instances, right? You know, the nations bringing their flocks, bringing their gold, bringing their silver, and that their kings may be brought as what? Captives. So we're going to have servants, we're going to have captives, we're going to have it all the resources, okay, that make you rich and bless you in abundance. That's why our gates are going to be continually open, because it's just going to be like there's always something coming in. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. See, and you know, it's really like that type of rule has been like that since history, right? The nation that was in power, the empire that was in rulership, had the other nations subject onto it. And if you try to revolt or you try to rebel, then they would come see you. And they would either destroy your kingdom or wage war against you, or they would shut it all down. So why would it be any different in our kingdom? If you don't want to serve us, you're going to perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted, and meaning they're going to be turned into ruin. And they're not going to want to try that, because this isn't going to be, you would never have a fair fight with the nation of Israel once the Lord raises us back up, because we're going to be a nation of gods. Okay, the scriptures say that the Lord is going to change us and we're going to have power. We're not talking about, power of spears or elephants or even Apache helicopters. We're talking about spiritual power. And none of you will ever have, no heathen will have that kind of power to be able to even try to come against us or refuse to serve us. And the scriptures tell you that if you don't come to serve the Lord, to fear the Lord, you're not going to get any rain. You're not going to get any war. Like, we can cause famines. We're going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not going to be an issue in terms of making them subservient onto us. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee. Now, what is the glory of Lebanon? The glory of Lebanon is what Lebanon is known for right here, which is their trees, right? Their resourceful plants. And that's going to be brought onto us, right? The fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together, which these are different kinds of trees, to be used, right, to beautify the place of my sanctuary, right, which is, ultimately Israel, okay, but where our dwelling, right, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. The sons also, because why? The Lord is going to be with us, right? His spirit is going to dwell with us, and it's going to go into that as we keep on reading. The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee. So who afflicted us? These nations, right? They all had a part in our downfall, in our affliction. And so their descendants, them and their descendants, shall come bending onto thee, meaning they're gonna be bowed down onto us, subject unto us. And all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, which is something you do when you are subject or paying reverence to someone. And that goes to show that the Lord is going to raise us up above them all. And that's why they're going to have to be under us. They're going to have to be subject to us. And they shall call thee the city of the Lord Yahweh, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. The word Zion going into monument, okay, or memorial or remembrance. All right, let's pull up that word Zion, which in the Hebrew is Tazayawan. It says parched place, another name for Jerusalem, especially in prophetic books. Let's see here. Right, monument, right? And so we are going to be known as the monument of the Lord. Let's go back. Verse 15, whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, like I mentioned, right, with the by being subject to the curses, by the Lord turning his face from us, hiding himself from us, right? We were forsaken and therefore we were hated, okay, and brought very low, so that no man went through thee. And as a nation, that would signify nobody associating themselves with us, right? People separating from us and looking at us and dealing with us reproachfully. So whereas in past time we were like that, because in the context of Isaiah 60, this is at the point where we've been glorified. I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations, right? So the Lord is going to beautify the nation of Israel, starting with his elect, with an eternal glory, right? He's going to give us a position of excellency that will never cease. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles and shall suck the breast of kings. This isn't literal in the sense of actually kings don't have breast milk, okay? But when it says sucking the milk of the Gentiles, what it means is we're going to have their resources, right? We're gonna have everything from them, just like a baby that sucks the mom's breast. What does a baby gain from that? They gain nutrients, right? They gain the things that they need that help them grow and flourish. So this is like an analogy to signify the things that we are going to gain from these nations, right? And thou shalt know that I, the Lord Yahweh, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer. Why? Because the Lord said he was going to do this. The fact that we're reading this, that the Lord told Isaiah, and very soon we're going to be living it, it's going to register in your mind. This is the work of Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai. The Lord said he was going to do this, and he has done it. The mighty one of Jacob. Now let's pull this up in another translation. In the NLT, right? Powerful kings and mighty nations will satisfy your every need, as though you were a child nursing at the breast of a queen. See, so that's what it means by sucking the breast of the Gentiles and the breast of kings. It doesn't mean we're actually going to be literally doing that. Verse 17, for brass I will bring gold, and for iron I will bring silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. And what does this signify? An upgrade, right? As commonly as you would find a base resource, that's how common you're gonna find these rare and exotic stones and resources, right? So today you can turn around and you'll see a stone, right? Or you'll see, a rock, or you'll see something like that on the ground. Just as easy as it is to just turn around, oh yeah, there's a stone right there. So you see it so much, you don't even think about it when you see it. You might kick it while you're walking. That's how common it is. It's going to be to have, instead of those stones, having, silver or gold, right? Or brass. Like that's the example that's being used here. And what does that signify? We're going to be very rich. I will also make thy officers peace and thine exactors righteousness, right? So we're going to be ruled by peace, right? And led by righteousness, because the officers and exactors are like those that are, governing or keeping the society, in order. But in this case, it's symbolic, right? To say that we will be governed and ruled by righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, nor wasting nor destruction within thy borders. So as to where today, that's all you hear in the communities of Israel. Every 2 seconds, somebody's getting shot, somebody's talking smack on a live, and then they get found, and then they get shot, or they get hit, or there's a drive-by, or somebody got stabbed, or somebody got beat up, or somebody, all these different things. In the kingdom, that's not going to be the case, right? We're not going to have to deal with that. But thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. See, so all around us, we're going to be at peace and joyful, right? And praised and praising the Lord. The sun shall be no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee. Now, it's important to understand that in the scriptures, there are times when the sun and the moon are symbolic or a representation of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, or guidance, right? And the reason is because they give light, and the light is a symbolic, is symbolic of right, a greater understanding, right, or knowledge. Because in a literal sense, when it's dark, you look for the light so you can see. And when you can see, you can do better, right? You know if something is in the way, you can identify what something actually is because you can see. That's why some might say like those that are blind are at a disadvantage, right? Or when it's dark in the nighttime, you're at a disadvantage. And the term enlightened, right, means to what? To have a greater understanding. So the sun and the moon are sometimes a representation of that. And here in Isaiah 19 and 20, it's not talking about the literal sun and moon. This is referring to the effect, right, of the sun and the moon, i.e. the light, which is like a guidance or knowledge or wisdom, right? It can be representing that. So when it says that the sun shall no more be thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, it doesn't mean that the sun and moon are going to stop. The sun is just going to disappear and the moon is going to disappear. Those are a part of the ordinances of life, right? That's a part of the creation of the earth. And that's always going to be there because you also use the sun to tell time, and so do you use the moon to also tell time. But here, what Isaiah is signifying is that the Lord is going to be so close to us, and he is going to be likened unto, let me read it, but the Lord Yahweh shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and and thy God thy glory. Right. So once again, that light will represent what? That guidance and that pure source of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So we are going to be enlightened on a much higher level. And to emphasize how much that's going to be, Isaiah said, basically references it as the Lord replacing our sun and moon. Okay, but in literal sense, we're always going to have the sun and the moon. Thy sun shall no more go down, and also key word, right? Thy sun. Now we know on the planet Earth, there's only one sun, right? It's not like we have our own sun and then the heathens have their own sun, right? And so on and so forth, right? So when it says thy sun, it's pertaining to Israel. And so this sun here is symbolic. Thy sun shall no more go down, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord Yahweh shall be thine everlasting life. See, now the sun going down is what allows you to dictate the ending and beginning of another day. So if the sun never went down, how would you tell when the Sabbath is coming in? How would you tell when a holy day is coming in? How would you tell these things? So we know that once again, the literal ordinance of the sun will not change, but what the sun represents in its symbolic nature of light, enlightenment, guidance is going to be for us on a much higher level, because that's going to be provided from Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai. As it says, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself. So we're never going to, basically, if you look at what happened to our people post 70 AD, going from being the people of the Lord, we were brought to a very, very low state, to the point where we couldn't even read and write. Right? We lost that knowledge, that wisdom, the understanding, the heritage. We lost it all. But in the kingdom, we're never going to be brought to a lower state. We're only going to be elevating more and more in understanding, right? In light, in purity, in guidance, in knowledge, in wisdom. That's why it's saying here that we're going to have the Lord for an everlasting light. And the days of thy mourning shall be ended. Right? So no more will we be in a state of mourning because we're in captivity or we're subject to the heathen nations being over us, right? Which is constantly putting you in stress, right? There's no rest. But when the Lord delivers us and glorifies us, those days of mourning are going to come to an end. Thy people also shall be all righteous, right? So all Israel is going to be righteous. No more wicked Israelites misleading others, lying to others, like disrespecting, I should say, the Lord, right? Committing heinous crimes one against another. All that is going to cease, and we're going to go back to being a righteous nation again. They shall inherit the land forever. Right? Why did we lose the land in the first place? Because of our wickedness. But by being righteous, all of us, we're never going to be kicked out of that land anymore. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, which are Israel. Right? The scriptures also liken us to being a plant or a tree that was planted by the Lord, that I may be glorified. So this time we're not going to be a tree that becomes a degenerate, vine that just starts going wild, right? We're going to be a pleasant plant of the Lord. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. And what this signifies is we're going to populate a lot. We're going to copulate and populate. Okay, so a little one becoming 1,000, meaning that you're going to have larger families. Today, family is like a husband, wife, a kid, maybe two. But in the kingdom, it's going to be much more than that, right? Because the condition is going to change, and we're going to have the resources to support that. And basically, it means the same thing as it says, a small one, a strong nation. So once again, as to where today your family is, much smaller, in the kingdom, your family, just like a family alone is going to be almost the size of a nation, right? Oh, this person is such and such, son of such and such of this household. Like how they show you in Game of Thrones, right? In Game of Thrones, you had families that were like nations, right? And then they called them the house, right? House of, Lannisters, the Starks, right? These were all a family. That's why they carry that name. So that's going to be brought back. And as it says, I, the Lord Yahweh, will hasten it in his time, meaning the Lord is going to make this happen in that time, which we're very quickly approaching. So this brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.